Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
All right, you're very welcome along to Wednesday Night Rugby here on Off the Ball. I'm delighted to say we're joined on the line by Off the Ball regular Matt Williams and also by the former scrum half for Scotland, Andy Nicol. Good evening to you, lads.
Good evening.
Thanks a lot for joining us. We're going to get into obviously the thick of Ireland-Scotland in just a minute because it's we're on the brink of it, just 4 days out. Matt, I'll go to yourself first, obviously, on the news that's come through today from the Wales camp that Rob Howley's been sent home. The news is that there have been allegations that he breached betting regulations. It's a bizarre scenario to crop up at a pretty bizarre time for them at the brink of the 4-year cycle, I suppose, in a lot of ways. Obviously, we can't comment on the specifics because they'll all come out over the next little while, and obviously there's a process underway from the Welsh Rugby Union, but this is awful timing for them.
It's just really sad, Adrian. Rob Howley's a really decent guy. I've met him a number of times, very humble guy. I'm really interested to get Andy's opinion on that. Andy's such a lovely bloke himself, great player. But Robbie's just got this glittering career as player and coach. He's just been an outstanding ornament to the game and servant of the game. And I was just so shocked to hear it and saddened because no matter which way this goes, and we don't know any of the details, even if he's exonerated, that these sort of things still stick with you, and I felt really sick in the stomach when I heard it. I've got no idea. I haven't heard of one whisper on what the allegation is, what it entails, or where it goes. But it's just horrible for the game of rugby at this time for that to be getting all the headlines instead of the wonderful matches coming up.
Yeah, by all accounts, he's cooperating with the investigation that's ongoing. And as you say, obviously, we don't know the details just yet. They'll come out, I'm sure, over the coming weeks. But that's the end of his involvement for the World Cup and the end, obviously, of his involvement with Wales. There have been rumours that he might have been about to take the Italy coach after the World Cup. Who knows where that sits at this minute. In terms of the impact on the squad, Matt, like they've obviously had a few injuries and that obviously hasn't gone as smoothly maybe as they might have liked it. Can there be an element here? Because I know Warren Gatlin's already been kind of talking about it, that sort of siege mentality. They wouldn't have designed it this way, but that sort of us against them sort of approach on the back of this.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different. Gatty's got to try and, polish the poo, hasn't he? It's a horrific situation. And I don't think there's many ways you can say it's us against them. It's an allegation of gambling, and every coach and player has it in their contract. You're educated on it, you're well informed on it, you don't go anywhere near it, you don't let yourself be put in that situation in any way. So it's not like there's some sort of, they're in cahoots to get them. I'm not really sure of that. I just don't think the Welsh travel that well anyway. I think in Cardiff they're a real handful, but on the road they're not as good. I can't see this as being anything but a very big negative for Wales and a positive for Australia, because when that game comes up, Australia versus Wales, the winner of that, will more than likely top their pool and avoid playing England in a quarter-final. So, look, I don't think it could come at a worse time for Wales and couldn't, not that the Australians would in any way want this to occur. So it's just a horrible, horrible thing. And they know it. This is Israel Folau. The Australians have just been through the whole Israel Folau thing, which has distracted the entire country away from anything good about rugby. And this is the same sort of thing in Wales. No one's going to be talking about the game that the Welsh have coming up this weekend. Everything's just about Rob Howley, and that's not good for the Welsh team, and it's not good for rugby.
Yeah, they've Georgia on Monday for their opener, Andy, and Warren Gatlin's already been in touch with Stephen Jones. He's called him in. Jones was due to be part of the new coaching ticket again post-World Cup with Wayne Pivac, but he's in a bit early now. It's hard to know what he can offer, really, this group in that short period of time.
Yeah, it's an interesting case for Wales, isn't it? Because a few weeks ago they were looking in great shape, weren't they? They were about to become world number one, albeit for it seemed to be about 5 minutes. But they had a very settled squad, both on the pitch, very settled coaching team, very experienced team. And if you look over the years, the teams that do well in World Cups are experienced teams, and Wales have got that. And Rob Howley was a massive part of that. He's always been Warren's number 2 up until the 2 secondments to the Lions, and when he did very well, actually, on one of those occasions. And so it is disruptive. And it's just, the injuries to Faletau, to Anscombe, and now the Howley being sent back, and then Wales losing, the 3 out of the 4 games in the warm-up. Just, I'm not saying that the wheels have come off in any way, but it's just not the momentum that you would want to go into a World Cup on. And Matt's right; it is a bit like Izzy Folau, but it's the proximity to that first game, I think, Matt, that probably makes this different, and actually could have it could have a negative effect. I mean, Stephen Jones, I don't think he'll be able to have an impact on the coaching side of it, because yes, he'll know all the players clearly, especially all the Scarlets. He's well known, he's very well respected in Welsh rugby. He's about to take over, so the players themselves will be wanting to make an impression on the new coach that's come in just that little bit earlier. But there's how much coaching goes on at this stage just before the World Cup is probably in question, but it's just a disruptive. You just don't want that. You want to be as smooth and under the radar going into a World Cup, and Wales have been anything but that.
Yeah, we'll see how it plays out over the next while. As we mentioned, we can't really say very much about the details of it because we don't know. They're not out there just yet, but I'm sure it'll unfold over the next few weeks, and we'll track that as we go. We are going to turn attention to the match obviously this weekend, and I should mention that our rugby coverage is brought to you by Vodafone Team of Us. Everyone in. We're not sure if everybody's going to be in at the weekend because I've spent some of my afternoon at least looking at the typhoon map out and around Japan that's heading towards the Sea of Japan, in fact, and from the bits and pieces that I've been looking at, we might avoid it this weekend. But Matt, the possibility of it and the possibility that the game gets postponed, cancelled in the extremity of it and called a 0-0 draw, organisers, it seems, are going to make the final call 6 to 8 hours before kick-off, so we'll know at least at that point exactly what's going to happen. So there's a lot of uncertainty about it, but the one thing we know for sure is it's certainly going to be wet at the very least, which is going to significantly impact perhaps how both of these teams approach the game.
Yeah, Japan at this time of year can be very, very humid, very hot, and you get these massive storms that roll through. It's very changeable weather, very tough weather. And I think Andy's probably going to sit there with a bit of a smile on his face. I think the rain would suit Scotland a little bit. In that I felt that when Scotland got their rush defence going against Ireland in the last Six Nations, they really troubled Ireland. Ireland got 3 breakout tries in that game, but for the almost the majority of the game, the Scots looked more comfortable in their role. There was a few poor defensive errors. Now, countering that, Finn Russell's one of the best, if not the best, instinctive player with a ball in hand in Europe at the moment. So that might slow them down a little bit. But it also might bring in the Scottish back row, and I suspect they might pick Johnny Barclay again. I'd like to hear what Andy says about that, because I think if the Scots get their back row really right and get on the ball, they can really cause some trouble to Ireland. And Ireland haven't got that word that Andy uses as well. They haven't got momentum. The Scots haven't either. They've been, a shocking game against France, a good game against France. They're up and down as well. But they do always cause Ireland trouble. And if you get that rain, that monsoon, that thing that's really different, it's not Dublin rain, it's not Scottish rain. This is coming in at 45 degrees, at 80 mile an hour. The monsoon rain over there is big drops, drenching rain, really pounding in. And the organisers will do anything to play that game. It'll have to be really horrendous conditions to call it off. The monsoon will have to come directly in. Now it can, but it will certainly put a huge variance on that game.
Yeah, Galway rain, Jack Harty called it during the week, actually, which might be the most appropriate one for it. Andy, would you take a 0-0 draw if it was to go that way?
I tell you what, a 0-0 draw. I might do, actually, but I have to say the rain, just on Matt's point there, for years Scotland would have wanted the rain, without doubt, but I don't think so now. I think with the back line they've got, they want dry weather. But I think every man and their dog knows that the way that Gregor Townsend wants to play the game is with tempo and pace and offloading, and obviously dry ball makes that much more likely to happen. Wet ball can be very difficult, and so I think if it gets wet and very wet, then the strength of the packs is the key determining factor here. And I think Ireland are probably stronger slightly in a wet game. In a dry game, I think there's evenly matched, and I think Scotland will be praying to whatever Japanese weather god there is that the monsoon passes and they get a dry deck for that game on Sunday, because they don't want to be in an arm wrestle. They want to play with pace. They want to get that ball moving around, and obviously wet ball makes that just that little bit harder.
Yeah, I think we'd all take that additional move, and it does seem there's been a lot made about the potential cancellation of the game and the 0-0 draw that will be called, but you'd assume that organisers do absolutely everything in their power to ensure that doesn't happen. Matt, just on some of the specifics on that Irish team, because obviously the injury updates are coming through pretty thick and fast from the Irish camp there. The latest on Earls and Kearney, knee and leg respectively, that they're expecting them to take part in training this week, and that all should be, hopefully we'll be fine at that end. It could be in the mix indeed for Sunday. Henshaw a bit longer obviously with that hamstring and may come back into it ahead of the Japan game in round 2. So that's sort of the latest that we have on the injury front. Conway would seem the obvious replacement at 15 if it comes to it.
I would suggest that that's the way it's going to go. I just wish, for Ireland's sake, they had Joey Carbery there for a longer period. I would have loved to have seen Joey Carbery at 15 in some of the trial games. I know they couldn't, he was injured, or earlier in the season. You've got to see the New Zealanders and the Australians are playing 2 out halves on the field, one at 10 and one at 15. And they're doing this to try and get around the rushing defence. And they've had success with it. Australia in Perth really troubled New Zealand. And very rarely can you use that phrase, really troubled. But they did by playing Kurtley Beale at fullback. So they had 2 ball players, and the way the defence works, that the centres and the winger charging in, the guy with a good ball player at fullback, like Kurtley Beale, or as the New Zealanders were doing, Bowden Barrett or McKenzie before he got injured, was allowing them to get around that rushing D. I would have loved to have had time, or for Ireland to have time to have Joey there. I think it would have been absolutely sensational. I don't think they'll do it now. I got to also say, the cynic in me, believe it or not, I'll believe Kearney's playing when he runs out. You don't get over, your 33, 34-year-old doesn't get over a calf injury in 5 or 6 days. They're buggers of things. They can hang around forever. I don't want that to happen for Rob. It's Rob's last World Cup, and I really want him to have a really positive experience. He's been a great servant. He's a lovely man. I don't want anything negative for him. I'm just not sure that he's ready to play. So I do think that's the way it will go. I believe Ringrose will come in at 13. That's, he's a great player. I actually prefer, a lot of people disagree with me, I much prefer Gary Ringrose at 13 to Robbie Henshaw. I think Henshaw and Ringrose is the best combination for Ireland in the centres, not taking anything away from Aki. He's a good player, very good player. But I think that's going to be the way it falls. And it's not as strong an Irish team with Conway at fullback. A good player, but not a great player.
Yeah, and you mentioned experience there in terms of Rob Kearney. It does, suddenly we're very light, despite all the work that Joe Schmidt has done over the last 4 years to build up the backup options. We'd be looking at, in that back three, if it was to be himself and Larmour and Stockdale on the wings as the back three, we'd be looking at around about 50 caps combined. It's light in experience for the biggest pool game. Yeah,
and they seem to have abandoned Jordan Larmour at fullback, and I think that's wrong. I think the kid was just building up enough experience to feel comfortable there. And while Andy's here, the great Finlay Calder said something to me once many years ago that he said he didn't remember his first 5 caps. You've got to get to 10 before you feel comfortable. I just felt Jordan Larmour's positional play was a little bit out, but there's no doubting his speed, talent and ability. But you need to leave the kid there and give him time. And that's where the old international Wednesday games would have been great for them. But they don't have those anymore. So you've got to give the guy full internationals. Now we're at the point where we're putting young Conway in, who, again, is a competent rugby player and has done some very good things, mostly plays on the wing like Larmour. But do we know enough about him to say, look, he's going to be much, much better than Jordan? So to me, we've sort of got off, changed horses mid-race. So it'll be interesting to see how Conway goes. I don't want the young guy to do wrong. I think he's a really talented guy. I just think it hasn't been a great process. And you throw into that, they threw Henshaw in for an absolutely disastrous game against England. That was a really, really bad day to do that. And so that backup to Carney has never really been seen through. Sure enough, first game, the big game, the game that's going to determine who tops the pool, we need a number 2 fullback, and we're not really sure where we stand.
Yeah.
And Adrian, just on that, Adrian, I think if Carney's missing, that's a big boost for Scotland, because wet or dry, irrespective, there's going to be some aerial bombardment to whoever's there at fullback, because they're not a genuine out-and-out fullback. So I think Carney's a big loss to Ireland, because if it's wet, even more so, but even dry, there'll be a lot of ball kicked in the air from Russell and from Laidlaw and Sam Johnson. They'll put it up there and test whoever's there in the number 15 green shirt.
Yeah, and I mean, and also on the wings, because it's the one thing that obviously with Larmour and Stockdale, if it goes that way, and it seems like it might, that obviously offensively they've great pace and can score a hatful of tries, but defensively there are question marks there. Assuming the Scottish lads are licking their chops looking at that back three.
I mean, listen, they're great players going forward as well. I mean, Larmour, I'm a massive fan of. They've not got the experience, the numbers of caps. Sometimes that, it is important. There's no doubt, but history shows that in World Cups, experienced teams do better. But also, talent is a key factor of this as well, and they've all got bags of that. So, a game can go for you. These guys could play out their skins. But we all know that it can also go the other way, and especially if they're tested under high ball, and the kick chase is good. Scotland didn't kick great last season, and they've been working very hard on that and get just the right depth, the right height on it, so that they can really compete for it. So, these guys in the back three for Ireland will be tested on Sunday, and they will have to come up with the answers. So
you expect that to be the game plan, and you don't expect it to change regardless of whether it is Rob Kearney or Conway?
No, I think Scotland and under Gregor, as I said earlier, they want to play fast, they want to play high tempo, but also they've got to win the kicking game as well. International rugby, there's a lot of kicking these days. It's probably more so than we probably give credit for, and it means that it's a really important part of the game. And so I think field position is really important, because nowadays you have penalties, you can come anywhere, so you want to be not giving away 3 points. You want to be happening in the opposition half. So tactically they've got to kick better. So I think irrespective, dry or wet, Scotland will kick the ball on Sunday, as Ireland will, and as every team will, to be honest. And so it's how you field them.
Yeah, like looking at Scotland, Andy, after a fairly terrible Six Nations, obviously just gone. Lots of good noises coming out of there recently, out of that Scotland camp. 3 from 4 in the warm-ups, obviously against France and Georgia. Stuart Hogg, reading his quotes this week, says it's a good time to be getting Ireland. The Scottish trajectory maybe on the up, where obviously the Ireland one, I know the last game of the warm-up maybe bucks this trend a little bit, but I'm sure you've taken some joy looking at that Ireland trajectory too over the last 6 months.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time. Gregor, I had dinner with Gregor a few weeks back, and this is the best time for an international coach, because he gets his players for a number of months, and it's fantastic. It's almost like a club environment in the international arena, which is great. And he's been very happy with how it's gone. I mean, when I looked at the fixture list, it was almost as if Scotland weren't at the party when it came to allocating the World Cup warm-up games, because France home and away, Georgia home and away wouldn't be probably the teams you would have picked. But anyway, that's how it fell, and actually it worked out okay. And part of that strategy was geared to the last game in the group match when Scotland played Japan in Yokohama, because Gregor wanted to take the team to Georgia, first tier 1 country to go there, to play in front of a hostile environment, exactly as they will be facing on the 13th of October against Japan. So there was strategy in it, and it worked out. The 3 out of 4 is pretty good. I think it's been hard to really gauge just how the teams are through these warm-up games. They've not been test matches of the intensity that we're going to see in the World Cup. It's all about just getting them battle-hardened, match-hardened, and avoiding injuries. And Scotland, by and large, have done that. Sam Skinner, Scotland lost, and then Jamie Ritchie's got a cheekbone that's going to miss Sunday's game. But other than that, they're fit. And there's a couple of key players have come back or come in. Duncan Taylor's come back, not really played much rugby in the last couple of years, really underrated. Anyone who knows him, and so whether it be Mark McCall at Saracens or Gregor, they rate him highly, and that tells me what I need to know about how good this guy is. And if he gets a run at 13 for any length of time, I think he could have big impact. And Blade Thompson at 8 looks like the big ball carrying number 8 that Scotland have lacked for a number of years. And so there's a couple of additions there into some of the exciting players we know about, obviously, in Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg and Sean Maitland. Sam Johnson is a key player at 12, just to maybe put the handbrake on Finn Russell at times. And I think Greg Laidlaw will be at 9. A lot of people here want Ali Price or George Horn to play that pace and tempo, but for me, Greg Laidlaw, his game management is hugely important in a game of this significance. So Scotland in reasonable shape, I think. I wouldn't say. I think there's a confidence about them internally. This is a massive test, obviously, and now that all the warm-up games are out of the way, we'll really see how these two countries are come Sunday. And I think it will be a tight game, and it just be little things here and there that could be the difference.
Yeah, no more than ourselves. Scotland like to be coming in as the underdog. They like to be written off. Will you just pick up the point that Matt made earlier on, Andy, just in relation to the two playmakers at 10 and 15 with Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg, and what sort of a threat that provides from a Scottish platform point of view?
Well, you wouldn't normally associate Stuart Hogg with being a standoff. Like Mike said, that the All Blacks in Australia are playing two standoffs, but Hogg has played a lot of rugby. Played for the British and Irish Lions at standoff back in 13 in Australia. So He is very comfortable. He comes in as first receiver a lot in phase play, and so with Finn Russell, with Sam Johnson, with Stuart Hogg, you've got 3 playmakers there, and that means that phase after phase, there's a good decision maker with his hands on the ball, and that's good. Sometimes when all your playmaking goes through your 10, all you need to do is get him in the bottom of the ruck, and suddenly you're bereft of any ideas. So Scotland, Sam Johnson, again, has just come under the radar. I think he probably came above the radar in that second half performance against England at Twickenham there, and that incredible try to almost win the game. But he's again a really good foil to Finn Russell, and so with a good rugby head inside him and Greg Laidlaw and outside him and Sam Johnson, it just allows Finn Russell to really get things going. And if he gets his mojo on this game on Sunday, he's so full of confidence. The move to Wrestling 92 has been fantastic for him. He's just got better and better, and not week in, week out. When I say better, as a person, he's just maturing. And as a standoff, you need that maturity and that good decision making. And he's getting better at making the right decisions at the right time.
Yeah, it's on trend, obviously, Matt, that dual playmaker thing. England have done it. Your beloved All Blacks, obviously, it's something they like to do as well. How do Ireland defend against that?
It's just really hard to defend when you've got someone like Bud and Barrett getting the ball with a bit of space. And it's the old story, Adrian. It doesn't matter what defensive system you use. Every system has its weaknesses, and every system leaves space somewhere. It's how you attack that space. Now, what's occurred with the rushing defence that sort of started against New Zealand from the Lions and then was carried on in last year's Six Nations, it's taken the coaches and teams a while to strategise their way out of it. Now, it didn't take New Zealand time to do it because they've been doing it for a long time with Mackenzie, where they were playing Bud and Barrett at 10 and Mackenzie at 15 for a long time. People saying, why are they doing that? And they're scoring try after try after try, getting around defences. Now, how do you defend it? Well, this is what it puts, the question it puts into the defensive coach's mind is, do I rush? Because if I rush and I don't get it right, Bowden Barrett's going to get the ball on a 3-on-1, and goodnight Gunga Din, he gets a 3-on-1 9 times out of 10, or 99 out of 100, they'll score a try. Or do I not rush, then just take some space and we hold a solid line and we shift along? So that would stop it. So it's forcing the defenders, which is a really good thing, I think. This is really challenging thinking for the coaches. It's challenging the defensive coaches to what do they do. Personally, I don't think rushing defence is very good for our game as a spectacle. It just shuts down too much. I think the referees are way too lenient. Most teams are offside a significant percentage of the game. So the fact that they have a threat at 15, like Barrett, like Hogg, like Beale, I think is a really good thing for our game. And if you watch the New Zealand, the championship this year, when the South Africans and the Australians really challenged New Zealand in a couple of those games. Not only was it good for world rugby seeing New Zealand wobble a bit, it was sensational footy. Like, it was breathtaking. And some of the games have not been breathtaking in the era of rushing defence, but it was really glorious football and put the outside defenders in two minds. And that's why I'm saying Joey Carberry is just such a talented athlete. He is beautiful with the ball in hand. He's got a great short kicking game. I would have loved to have seen him have 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 games in a green jersey building up at 15. That hasn't been possible. I'm not blaming Joe for that. It just hasn't been possible. But I think for Ireland, there is a perfect example of what Ireland could have done, but I don't think they will do.
And Adrian, just on that, if I could come in on that point, because Matt makes a great point, and what it's done, it's put the advantage just slightly into the attacking team, because they've got these two options. When for a number of years, defences were on top, because if you only had one playmaker and you had a rush defence, you could really snuff them out. That meant that opposition, that attacking threat, had completely snuffed out. When you've got those two attacking threats, I just think what's great for this World Cup potentially is that you've got the attacking teams just slightly with their head ahead in the race than the defence, and that's good. Because you want the World Cup, you want this to be a fantastic advert for rugby, with teams scoring tries and being attack minded, rather than World Cup being won by defences. And so I just think that the attack coaches have got their head slightly ahead. I don't know if Matt agrees, than the defence coaches, and that's a good thing for rugby.
Yeah, you're dead right, Andy, and it is great for the game. I mean, the championship this year, I know it's a truncated championship because of the World Cup, but it was spectacular to watch. Even the close games like New Zealand, South Africa, that was the draw in New Zealand at Wellington, I think it was. It was a pulsating game. It was just dramatic and wonderful. It wasn't in the yin and yang, as Andy said, of defence and attack, which is rugby. The defence has been on top for a number of years, and it's just great and breathtaking to see Australia, who have had their worst year since 1953 last season. It was their worst win-loss ratio since 1953. They came out and put more points on New Zealand than any team in the history of the game in Perth this year. That's exciting, because when we've had this one team so far in front, almost unchallenged, winning World Cups, that's not good for our game. And I know the New Zealanders don't like hearing this, but it is great when you see that against the last 4 games against Tier 1 teams, they've only won 1. Ireland beat them, South Africa have beaten them twice, and Australia beat them. And they've only just come back and beaten Australia at Eden Park. Now, Australia have only won at Eden Park 3 times since the Great Depression, so I don't think they'll call that a great victory. But it just shows you that the best team in the world is having trouble now, and that's really good, really positive.
Just one comment in from Joseph Allen there on YouTube, wondering if your beloved All Blacks comment was sarcasm, and I'm sure, Matt, you'll appreciate that it was. Before we just wrap up on this particular chat, what's your expectation? It is a tough one for you because you've a foot in both camps, obviously. What's your expectation for the outcome on Sunday morning?
It's a bit hard to say exactly now, Adrian. I'm not fudging that, but we don't really know who they're selecting. And I think this is going to be a big selection. I think that, I expect Henderson to be in the second row alongside Ryan. It'd be very interesting, the Irish back row, where that comes out. Van der Fly, Conan, does he pick Omani? Or does he pick Conan and CJ Stander with Van der Fly, or does Omani go there? I think that's a really interesting decision where that one goes. I also, obviously, Bundyaki will be at 12 because Henshaw's injured, and then that back three, the combination where that back three goes. So there's so many unanswered questions, and I would say the same about Scotland, like Andy's points. I think Scotland have got some really exciting backs at the moment, and Andy's rattled them off. And, Stuart Hogg and Finn Russell are 2 of the most wonderful rugby players to watch in the world. Now, if Scotland get their selection right in there, and their forwards can win some possession and hold their scrum and not lose some penalties at scrum time and win enough ball and maybe steal some Irish ball, Scotland are going to be right in this game. So I think it's going to be a very, very close affair for all the reasons we just said. The other one is Ireland just cannot get any momentum. They cannot build up a head of steam. Coming into this game now, they're up, they're down, they're down, they're down, they're up. Do they take a bit out of that last game? Yes, they do. But that 15 or the 23 that will be on the pitch have not played together as a 23. So that's going to be very, very interesting to see how this team gels and pulls together, how Carberry's used off the bench. The bench will be massive. Where the Scots go is going to come down to selection. Very even. I think if I looked at it genuinely, I'd agree with Andy. I think the Irish forwards have an edge on the Scots, and that might be enough to win it. But they have to win their lineouts, and there's no Deb Toner calling. Henderson will call. That is a work in progress. So it's going to be a very, very tight game.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns. Andy, what are you thinking?
I'm just really excited. I can't wait for it. I mean, I don't know what it's like in Ireland, but everyone's here is talking about this being the biggest game in 4 years since we played Australia in the quarter-final. But I think the bigger game for Scotland is actually later in the group stage against the host nation Japan, because it used to be. Well, if you look back through all the World Cups, there was always a huge incentive to win the group because it gave you a slightly easier quarter-final position. But you actually look at the draw for both Ireland and Scotland, I think it's an absolute stinker. Because irrespective of what happens on Saturday, both teams go through this group. We get either New Zealand or South Africa in either way. And so two of the best 3 teams in the world. And so I think it's a horror draw. So for me, this is about setting for Scotland, setting their stall out in this World Cup. And yes, if they get a win, which they absolutely can, for all the reasons Matt just said, but it's not the be all and end all. It's not the last game that you win this, you're in, you're through, or win it or lose it, you're out. So I think there's a bit of a freedom there that Scotland can go and play with. And if Scotland get good ball, and that's not just first phase. For me, I think this World Cup is going to put a lot of pressure on the second rows. I think the way the game's evolving is that the second rows have been asked to do more than they've ever done before and almost have the same impact that back rows used to have maybe a few years back. So that means your second rows have got to get a real impact both as ball carriers, as defenders, as decoy runners, and have decision makers as well. And this is where I just think, Gilchrist and Gray and Toulis, whichever 2 out of the 3, but all 3 will be on the pitch at various times, I've no doubt. I think we need to get more from the Scotland second rows, because I think the back row is good, I think the front row is fine, I think the backs, as we've said quite a bit, can really compete. And so for Scotland, it's about what impact they can get there. But for Ireland, you're the number 1 ranked team in the world, which
you're not throwing that line at us, Andy. Come on now.
Which is strange, because when you were winning the Grand Slam and beating the All Blacks, you probably were the best team in the world, and I'll tell you why. Because Conor Murray and Johnny Sexton were the best halfbacks in the world, and that in the last year they've just dropped off slightly, and that means Ireland have dropped off slightly. And so these boys are world-class players. They can get back up to that level that only a few people know where that is, and they can. And that could happen on Sunday. It might not. If it doesn't happen, then Scotland have a chance. If the Irish halfbacks get back to the level that they've been at, then they can control the game irrespective of the conditions. But I think it's going to be a cracker. I'm really excited about it. Scotland Ireland in the World Cup is great. I think the last time it was 1991, wasn't it, that we played back here in Murrayfield in the group match, which was I think Scotland won that one. So that'd be a nice omen if we could continue with that trend.
Yeah, you're taking some awful cheap shots at us there, but I'm going to take that as a Scotland prediction, by the way. Before you go, I do want to get your thoughts on a story that was developing from Japan, another story that was developing from Japan during the week. This was our own Owen Sheehan, who's on the ground in Japan. He was at the South African press conference during the week. The South Africa forwards coach, Matt Proudfoot, was put forward to address the perception of South African rugby as having a doping culture. Here was his response.
Owen Sheehan from Off the Ball in Dublin. How are things?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Very well. So there's been a lot written in Irish media over the last couple of days about rugby and drugs in rugby, and a question for you as somebody who's worked in the Northern Hemisphere. It's kind of a two-pronged question. We've had to ask hard questions in Ireland of underage players in schools as well. Does rugby have a doping issue, and does South African rugby have a doping issue?
I think I'm a forwards coach, mate. That's something for administrators to answer on. I wouldn't have to be able to answer that question. I don't have the information to answer that question. If you ask me something about the game specifically, I can answer that, but that's for administrators.
Are you concerned at all about the image of South African rugby?
I think the image of South African rugby is portrayed about what you see on the field. We're competitive. We're a competitive nation. If you look at from our sevens team, how well they're competing on the world stage. Our junior side third in the world championships, junior championships. The Springboks competing well. The women's team qualifying. So I think that's the image of South African rugby that needs to be attained. I think if from a sports spectator point of view, of course, doping in sport is something that continually needs to, not just rugby, continually needs to be addressed on a worldwide platform. So to talk about it from an assistant coach position, I don't think it's my role to speak about.
Yeah, that's Matt Proudfoot, who's the South African forwards coach. Matt, just one to you on it. It strikes me that, like, outside of the specifics of it, it doesn't do the debate really any service when a coach at that elite level, and I appreciate he's on the brink of the World Cup, is coming out essentially to say, listen, none of my business.
Yeah, it's all of our business. It's everyone's business to say that any sort of performance-enhancing drugs in any sport, in particular rugby, is not wanted. There's no place for it. Players need to be educated out of the long-term health effects on the athlete are horrific, and people that take substances for short-term gain are crazy. And can I also say, though, I've never come across people taking performance-enhancing drugs. I have come across lots of dumb guys that have taken Codral cold tablets and it's got pseudoephedrine in it, things like that. But I've never come across anyone doing that. Now, that doesn't mean there's not. On percentage, there has to be. But I do have to say that some of the comments that have been coming out of the Irish media, simply because people are big and athletic and have done a lot of work in the gym over many, many years, doesn't make them drug cheats. Now, there has to be some balance in this discussion that a guy that started at 15, and everyone now, our generation didn't lift weights, right? If you go back to Neil Francis and those guys didn't lift weights. They are still very, very big human beings. If you meet Willie John McBride, you meet Bill Beaumont, you go and meet Dottie Weir, you meet these guys, they are very big human beings. They didn't lift weights, but they didn't take drugs. Now, is there a problem in South Africa? In the past, when they were in isolation, there was a lot of guys failed drug tests. That was 20 years ago. We've had a spate of guys die that were in the 1995 World Cup, which is horrific. And all of us have thought about it. Is there? Now, we don't know. But to come out and to say a sport like rugby has a problem, and that's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. Sports science, I've been in professional coaching for almost 30 years. Coaching has regressed. People are copying off the internet. They're not using thinking. They're not creative. They're not original. Sports science has gone forward in so many generations. It is tenfold above. And I was trained in that area. I was trained initially in sports science. It is extraordinary what the sports scientists around the world know. And that is done on good nutrition and on doing a lot of the right work, the smart work. They train a lot smarter than we ever did. It's changed a lot better. But to suggest that everyone is taking drugs, I mean, that is a very immature statement. Should we be saying that we're all opposed to any sort of drugs in sport? Should we be educating our kids about it so they're not tempted? Yes, we should. If you go into any gym in Dublin, I would guarantee you I could find steroids. And they're not rugby players. And I've been in the gyms and I've seen it. So I think we have to keep the whole story in a balance.
Yeah, I think I think you're right. You can't look at a photograph and say because of that these guys are doping. Now, I think the one caveat obviously is the difference between the Willie John McBrides of this world and the people that we were seeing in that photograph was how cut they were, the six packs, the what looks like 0% body fat, and also obviously on the back, doubling down on that of the Afiwa Giante failed test that had come to light as well in the weeks previous to that. So I suppose that's probably where to be fair, where the debate was coming from, and it doesn't, as you say, South Africa have the greatest track record when it comes to drugs in sport at all. all levels of the game there. So
I know in the old days, and Andy will back this up, the teams used to, when they were amateur days, this is only 20 years ago, teams would get together and go out and have 20 pints on the Monday or the Tuesday night before a test, sometimes on the Friday night. You know, that's when they were amateurs. Now these guys just don't. You know, I think we've got to compare apples and apples. What happened 20 years ago with those guys and what's happening now? These guys are really well-defined, world-class athletes, trained at the highest level with the best sports science. Can some of them be taking illegal substances? We have to assume some are. But to think that the South African team en masse is being handed illegal substances or performance-enhancing drugs, I just think that is just such an immature, uneducated argument that I really just roll my eyes at it and keep going.
Matt,
I mean, Adrian, I'd say if you were to get a picture of every professional rugby team in the world, you would see physiques like we saw in that South African squad. You know, that is just the nature of the athletes that play rugby union now. And so I think, I mean, Matt summed it up brilliantly. There's always going to be people that will try and cut corners, but by and large, I don't think it's right. It's not rife at all. It's anything but that in rugby union. And I just think, I hope that we're scandal-free and injury-free, you know, big major serious injuries in the World Cup, and I hope there's no drug allegations or testing come out of it. And we're just talking about the brilliant tournament that starts on Friday. But I think there's a lot of accusations without real substance in this, and there's a little jealousy because of one picture.
Yeah, all right. Well, look at it, and that if there are those bending the rules out there, that they're caught, obviously, will be the other hope of that. So, look, appreciate both your comments on that and on the other topics this evening as well. Andy, Matt, thanks a million for taking the call.
Pleasure now.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to both lads, and enjoy the game, obviously, on Sunday morning, and indeed the action away on Friday. We're really looking forward to getting stuck into it over the next few days. Now, over the last couple of weeks, you'll have noticed some lovely conversations we've been having with various former Ireland players as part of our Answering Ireland's Call series, all with thanks to Vodafone. Today it's the turn of Nick Popplewell. Here he is, remembering getting his first cap in 1989. It was a bit of a baptism of fire against those beloved All Blacks.
I played for Ireland 1989 to 1999. What I think I do was that long ago. I received it when I was in work in Bray. Those were the days of landlines. There was no mobile phones. I would have rung my future wife to be Rachel, who was working in the bank. And then obviously Mum and Dad. Then after that, I was fairly happy about it, even though I think it was New Zealand and Lansdowne Road was going to be my first cap. So it wasn't going to be an easy one. And it proved out not to be an easy one, because I only lasted about 18 minutes. I broke 3 ribs. Or they were broken for me, apparently. It did come as a surprise. I mean, you could never presume, and they were the years when there was very much trading places. Things probably weren't quite as transparent as they are now, and it was difficult to get on. The one that would stand out would be, obviously, British Lions, New Zealand Tour 93, getting picked for the first test. You know, that's what things are, you know, that's, to us, that's the Olympic medal. It's the gold medal. You know, it's quite easy to get on a Lions Tour, but to get a cap is a different scenario altogether. So,
yeah, lovely stuff from Nick Popplewell there. You can check out the full piece up on offtheball.com, and also pieces up there with Keith Wood and John Hayes as well that are definitely worth checking out, all as part of that Answering Ireland's Call series, all with thanks to Vodafone. That's it for Wednesday Night Rugby.
Wednesday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.